great. Thank you. Like Em said, I'm a professor, assistant professor in the financial planning department at the University of Georgia. And in our program, we have bachelor's, master's, and doctoral students that are studying financial planning. So I teach those students the board certified curriculum for the Certified Financial Planner Board. And so that entails retirement planning, estate planning, income tax planning, investment planning. And in that program, our students, most of our students are going on to become professional financial planners, wealth managers that'll sit down with families, individuals and families, and help them plan their finances. Our doctoral students typically will go on and become faculty members at other financial planning programs. So just to give you a little background of what I do at the university, I also do a lot of research. And so being at a research intensive university, I research primarily on the financial well-being of African-American families, Hispanic and Latino families, women. And so groups that have historically been or historically have experienced some kind of marginalization in the past. And so that's what I do. And I'm happy to be here today. And let me just say up front that just because I do have information in this area does not mean that I am the expert of your life. And so I will be providing some information, and I'm just here to kind of partner with you so that you can, as a source of information that you can use to better your financial situation. I'm all about people having overall financial well-being. And so whenever I can add some information or add something to someone's life, financial life, that's kind of what I'm about. All right, let's get started then. Let's jump right into it. All right, so we're going to talk today about some strategies to manage debt. And when you talk about debt, there's two things. There's when you look at a balance sheet, there's assets and there's liabilities. Well, debt is going to fall on that liability side. And so I'm just giving you a little bit of overview or terminology so that we're on the same page as I talk today. I might say balance sheet, and that's what I'm talking about. I'm talking about the difference between assets and liabilities, where liabilities are your debt. I'll talk about net worth being the difference between assets and liabilities. So if you add up everything that you own and then you subtract off everything that you owe, that's your net worth. So if I say net worth, I'm talking about assets minus liabilities. And then I will mention an income statement. An income statement just is a history of what you bring in, the financial resources that you bring in, minus or versus the things that you have to spend or the expenses that are going out. But there are challenges that people face. There are challenges that people face in just living this life in the United States, this financial life in the United States. Student loan debt is out of control. And so there are lots of people that are right now experiencing a lot of student loan debt where it's preventing them from making life choices like, am I going to buy a home, or am I going to be able to save for retirement? Credit card debt, or it's also called consumer debt. So if you hear me say consumer debt, most of the time I'm going to be talking about credit card debt. And so, credit card debt is high. A lot of credit card debt comes from just wage stagnation in many cases, where individuals don't have enough income to kind of sustain the necessities that they have in life. And then also there's challenges with people spending and saving and the behaviors around that. Really spending and saving in a lot of ways is an attitude, and it's a habit in the United States. The savings rate is less than 10%, has been for, except for 1 year, has been for the last 30 years. And so there are challenges that most Americans face in these areas of asset, debt, spending. And there are a lot of people that feel hindered by their debt. So if you feel hindered by your debt, then as we go through the presentation today, then hopefully that there is one or two things that you can kind of grasp onto, or if you have a question, I might be able to answer a question that you can grasp onto that may help you move one step forward in terms of feeling less hindered by the amount of debt that you have. And then this is a big question. This last one is, should you completely pay off your debt? And I'll talk more about that one later in the slides, but that's a question that's a real question that lots of people have. All right, we can go forward.
I have a question. Would you be able to kind of touch on what's good debt?
I could talk about that a little bit. Yeah.
Kenneth, did you want to wait until the end to answer that, or is that okay for you to answer during the presentation?
I can answer it now, or I can wait till the end. If you want me to go ahead and answer it now, I can do that. That's fine.
Yeah, if you're comfortable with it, that's fine.
Okay. Yeah. So when you hear the term good debt, that's usually debt that is going to provide you, that you take on, that's going to ultimately either provide you some income or that will increase your net worth in some way. Or it has some kind of tax advantage for you. So one of those three categories is what usually determines whether a debt is good debt versus what people will call bad debt. And so, for example, buying a home and taking out a mortgage is usually considered, people will usually consider that good debt for two reasons. One is because there's some expectation that your home will appreciate. And if your home appreciates, then that's going to increase your net worth. Also, in the tax code, mortgage debt is, you may be able to deduct mortgage debt on your income tax return. And so there's some advantage to that kind of paying that kind of interest on debt for a mortgage. Or student loan debt, although student loan debt is outrageous in this country right now. Student loan debt often leads to an individual being able to secure income for themselves. And so some people will consider that to be good debt. Taking out a business loan is sometimes considered good debt. Taking out a business loan, of course, is going to be risky because a lot of businesses in the United States don't make it. And so that could be a risk, but it's considered good debt when you can sustain that business and provide an income for yourself. On the flip side of that, though, is like bad debt. What people would consider bad debt would be consumer debt. So debt on credit cards where you are trying to maybe finance your lifestyle with your future earnings. That's what happens with, in some cases with credit card debt. People aren't able to purchase what they need to purchase today, and so they will put it on a credit card. Now, there are cases where that's necessary. So some people use their credit cards as a quote unquote emergency account. But what I'm talking about is if you want to go on vacation, and so you put the vacation on a credit card, that would be considered what most experts would consider bad debt or not good debt. Or if you want to go on a shopping spree to buy Christmas gifts, and you don't have the finances today to buy those gifts, but you put it on a credit card, then that will be not considered good debt. So that's kind of the difference between good debt and bad debt. Did I answer your question? I'm gonna take that as a yes. Okay.
Yes, thank you.
All right. So the very first thing you need to do in terms of managing your debt is to know where you are today. And so organizing your debt is one of the first things that you need to do. So if I came to you and asked, what is your social security number? Please, nobody put your social security number in the chat. But if I asked, what is your social security number? You would know that number. If you were a student somewhere and I asked you what your grade point average is, most people would know that number. If I asked you what your telephone number is, most people will know what their telephone number is. I think it's the same way with our debts and our finances. There's certain numbers that we should just know in our financial lives. One is your credit score. Another is the amount of debt that you have. And so when you organize your debt, you want to really take time to go and line up or write down everything that you owe and put a number to it. If you need to, contact the people that you owe to get a current balance on that debt. And every year I do a net worth statement or a balance sheet for myself. So I look at all of the things that I own versus all of the debts that I have, the things that I owe. And so it's something that I do on an annual basis. And it allows me to know exactly where I am. So organizing your debt is the first step to actually managing and ultimately paying off your debt. And so when you do that, you want to prioritize the debts that are most important for you to pay off. And when I say most important for you to pay off, it's those debts that if you only had $100, which one would you want to pay first? Right? And you would want to pay the ones first where you're able to have somewhere to live, or have something to eat. You want a roof over your head. You want like the bare necessities in life, the things that are going to keep you alive, that are going to keep you protected. So, paying your mortgage is important because if you don't pay your mortgage, you might go into foreclosure. And so just prioritizing the things that you need to pay right now. Having medical bills, though, is something that may be lower on your priority list, because if you have medical bills, that's not going to kind of harm your family in any way. Another thing, just back up one sec. Another thing is that when you talk about paying debt, or when you talk about getting into a situation where you might be experiencing debt collection or some kind of stress from your finances, I would say don't let other people stress you out. Like, don't let the debt collectors that might call you or send you things in the mail, don't let them stress you, and don't let them make you feel bad about your financial situation. You want to keep a positive attitude and a positive view of your financial situation so that you can put together a plan and move yourself forward, and move yourself forward in a way that you are going to stick to that plan and ultimately get to where you want to be. And one thing about financial stress or stress from finances is that it can get you in a position where you are not making the best financial decisions, where you're making decisions that are causing further further harm in your financial life. And I used to work at Chrysler when it was Chrysler, and I don't even know where it is now. It's been bought and sold a couple of times, but I used to work there, and I would listen to some of the older gentlemen that worked there, and they always would tell me, don't throw good money after bad. And so what that means is that although you may have made bad financial decisions in the past, or or things may have happened in the past that have caused you to be in a financial situation where you don't want to be. Well, you don't want to take your good money today and to continue to make decisions about your financial future that will cause you further stress. All right. Okay, so once you have organized your debts and you have prioritized them, so you know who you owe, you know the amount that you owe, you know the order that you need to pay individuals in or these companies in, then the next thing you want to do is just contact them. If you find that you are not able to pay everybody at least the minimum amount that you owe on a monthly basis, contact your creditors. Don't just ignore the debt, or don't just ignore the payments that you owe. Contact your creditors. Very often, if you contact them, there might be assistance available that they're willing to offer to help, because they want to recover the outstanding balances that are owed to them. And so sometimes you can put together a spending plan. Now, that's very common with medical debts. You can put together a spending plan. That's also very common with debts that people may owe from taxes. If you have a big tax debt, contact the IRS, and you can put together a spending plan. As a matter of fact, even with the IRS, they have taxpayer advocates that you can contact that will help to kind of navigate the system with the IRS so that you can get on a debt repayment plan. Even student loan debt, you can contact them, and there's different payment options. As a matter of fact, with student loan debt, right now the payments are even suspended for federal student loans. You still need to pay your private ones, but the federal student loans are suspended. Payments are suspended right now, but there's different types of payment plans for student loan debt. And so there's ways that you can stop collectors and companies from harassing you about the debt that you may owe, but you kind of have to be proactive and contact them. It may mean that you may need to write letters to the company, to state agencies, but there's ways that if you contact them and there's no assistance available, or they're not willing to put you on a spending plan, but they keep pressuring you about paying your debts, paying your debts, then there are steps that you can take to kind of stop them from harassing you, so that you can get a little bit of a reprieve and catch your breath, put together your plan, and then work your plan. All right, so you have organized your debt, so you know who you owe, you know how much you owe. You have even contacted your creditors and maybe put together some kind of repayment plan for your creditors. You have prioritized which ones you need to pay now, and those being the ones that will harm your family the most. So pay your mortgage so that you don't go into foreclosure. Make sure you're paying your rent so that you are not facing eviction. And then other bills like credit card bills, you may need to kind of push those off for a while until you really get a firm grasp on your repayment plan. But there's two different strategies that most experts are going to talk about. One is the avalanche and the other is the snowball. So let's just kind of take them one at a time and talk about the pros and cons of each. So when you talk about an avalanche, the approach there or the strategy there is to attack the debts with the highest interest rates first. And for most people, that will be credit cards. Now, that kind of contradicts what I just said about making sure that you prioritize your debts and pay those things first that are going to keep you in the home, are going to keep you eating, that are going to keep you with the vehicle so that you can get back and forth to work. And but once you have prioritized those things, then you want to look at the bills that have the highest interest rate, and you want to attack those first. The reason why is because if you're paying a high interest rate, that's money that's not going to pay the principal. And so with the high interest rate, if you can knock off those debts first, then you'll have more money in the long run to pay down the principal of other debts. And so you can save yourself money by paying less interest over time. So that's one of the pros for that. One of the cons for that avalanche method is that you don't necessarily see successes right away. So many people are encouraged or motivated by seeing debts kind of fall off. If you have 5 different bills that you're trying to pay off, using this avalanche approach may not eliminate those bills, but you will be paying down the highest interest rate bill over time, you'll save yourself money in interest charges. The second strategy is what we call a snowball. And with the snowball effect, or with the snowball strategy, you'll attack your lowest balances first. So you've organized your debts and you know how much you owe each person or each company, and then you look at what the smallest balance is, and I'm going to just go all in to pay off that small balance, the smallest balance first. So you pay the minimums on all of your debts, and then anything that you have left over, all of that goes to attack your lowest balance debt. And once you do that, then you should pay off that lowest balance, that low balance, kind of quickly, and then you take everything that you were using to pay off that low balance and create a bigger snowball to attack the next lowest balance. And so you go from low balance to, or lowest balance to next lowest balance to next lowest balance, and you attack your debts that way. And you're not really looking at what the highest interest rates are, but you're looking at just the balance of the accounts. I'm gonna say it again, make sure you pay at least the minimum on all of the other bills though, so that you don't get, so that those other bills are at least staying current. So one of the pros for that particular method is that you get that sense of satisfaction. Like, I paid off a bill. Wow, I had 5, now I only have 4. So I'm feeling like this debt repayment plan is working for me because I can actually see bills falling off or these debts going away. Now, one of the cons of this method is that you may be paying more in interest over time in order to get that immediate satisfaction, or that immediate gratification of seeing the bills fall off. Because your lowest bill might be, the lowest account balance might be the bill with the lowest interest rate also. And your highest interest rate bill might be your biggest one. And so you're not really attacking that one, but you're just knocking off the lower balance accounts. Okay. All right, so here's a word that many people in our country are just not comfortable with. And so I'm not even going to say it because I don't want to turn anybody off immediately. I want you to hear what I'm saying first. And then hopefully by the end, you're able to mention the B word. But when you talk about repaying debt, one of the things that you have to do is you have to control your spending. So there's really only 2 things that you can do with money. You can spend it or you can save it. And there's really only 2 things that can improve your financial situation. You can either decrease your expenses or you can make more money. So this is real. I mean, it's real simple. You either have to decrease your expenses by putting together a spending plan, or you can make more money. And I see a little comment here in the chat that says investing. Investing is what you do to increase your income. And so investing causes you to, well, also investing helps you to outpace inflation also. But there's really 2 things that investing does. One is it creates some income for you. And so if you invest in a rental home, a rental property, then you're hoping that, one, you'll get some income from that rental property investment. And you're also hoping that over time, that home will increase in value, and so you'll get some appreciation that kind of outpaces inflation. Or when I say inflation, I'm talking about the cost of goods and services. So an increase in the cost of goods and services is kind of erodes your purchasing power. And so you hope your investments will keep you above inflation. Yeah, so earlier I talked about an income statement, and this is where your cash flow plan or your spending plan comes in, is that you look at, and I ask my students to do this every semester, to take a month and just record everything that comes in. So all the income that you get versus everything that goes out. Just write it all down. I don't care if it's, I went to and bought a bag of chips, write it down because that was money going out. And at the end of a month, you'll be able to see better where your money is going. And once you're able to see where your money is going, then you can adjust so that you can put together a plan to restrain what you're spending. Like you may find that you're eating out a lot, or you may find that that you're buying a lot of clothes for some reason, but you may need to adjust some of those areas so that you can pay off some of those debts. And it'll be a sacrifice, but it'll be a short sacrifice in many cases. Short can be anywhere from, short is relative. It can be a month or it can be, a year, but it doesn't last always is what I mean. And then you can, it'll be a short sacrifice, but you can, you can kind of see, a light at the end of the tunnel. Another thing about having a cash flow plan is that it could affect your, earlier I talked about a balance sheet and your net worth, but having a cash flow plan or an expense plan could help with your net worth. And the reason why is because many times people will ask, well, should I pay off my debts or should I save? Should I pay off my debts or should I invest? Well, when you're talking about your net worth, then it doesn't really matter which one you do, because both of them will get you to the same place. I would encourage you to first, though, have an emergency account, or an emergency plan. Hold on, I'm gonna get a drink of water here. Okay, I would encourage you to have an emergency account or an emergency plan at least. So you might hear people say, have 3 to 6 months of income in savings for emergencies. You might hear other people say, well, as long as you have a credit card for emergencies, then you're fine. You might hear other people say, as long as you have a Roth account, then that's fine. You can use your Roth account for an emergency, but have an emergency plan while you're going through your debt repayment plan, so that if something occurs, you don't have to have more debt that kind of counteracts what you've already put in place. But in terms of net worth, paying off debt versus saving is kind of get you to the same place with your net worth, because one is going to affect the asset side of your balance sheet and one will affect the liability side of your balance sheet, but they will affect in such a way that it's increases your overall net worth. All right, go to the next slide for me. All right, thank you. So one of the first things that you want to make a decision to do is to spend less than you earn. And this is like one of the most basic, but one of the most powerful things that that you can do with your finances. You know, there was a research article I saw that said that in terms of being prepared for retirement, the two things that matter most are spending less than you earn and tracking your expenses. And so if you can do those two things, then you can get a handle on whatever financial situation you might be facing right now. And the third point here is to make savings automatic, to build an emergency fund and to build your net worth. Making your savings automatic, where it just comes right out of your paycheck, or it comes right out of a savings account and goes to pay off a bill, is one of the best things that you can do, because it removes you and anyone else from the situation. It just goes, it allows, it kind of puts this thing on autopilot. And if you have a debt repayment plan that that you put into place, then having money go right to a creditor will kind of help eliminate the habit that you might have in terms of your spending plan, and or might help you to have a savings plan and a debt repayment plan at the same time. Go to the next slide for me. All right, thank you. So if just a little earlier, I was talking about there's two things that you can do. There's your expenses, and then there's the income. So you can either spend less or you can earn more. So one of the things that you may need to do is to figure out how to make more money. Sometimes that just means asking for a raise at work, if it's possible. You know, sometimes if you go to your employer and you can state a case where you know, you may be able to get a raise at work. Sometimes that might mean that you can take on more responsibilities at work. Sometimes that means that you can create a side hustle for yourself, create a side business for yourself. And I understand that time is valuable, time is of the essence, and time is in limited supply in many cases. But sometimes some of the things that we're doing, we can do and also create additional income for ourselves, some of the things that we're already doing. So you might be able to tutor, or you might be able to train people if you're into physical fitness, or if you're into nutrition, maybe you can create nutrition plans for people. There's things that we can do to create more money. And if we create more money, then we have more financial assets that can go towards paying off those debts. No, that's fine. Go ahead. Yeah. All right. So this is, should I file bankruptcy? I tried to, when I was thinking about what to talk about today, I was, you know, we can contact our creditors. We can put together debt repayment plans. There's organizations that can help with debt repayment. And let me just say, many of the organizations that do debt repayment plans or that offer those debt repayment services, just be careful about some of those, and because some of those plans are not worth the time and the money that you might have to pay in order to take advantage of whatever services they're offering. But you might get to a point where, you know, I've done all that I think I can do, and bankruptcy might be an option, or you might consider bankruptcy. What bankruptcy does is allow you to get a fresh start. It allows you to reset. Bankruptcy is, yes, it does cause your credit score to take a hit. And so you have to think about, is bankruptcy the right option, or when it might be the right option? Do you need to buy something on credit coming up at any time soon? Are you planning to get a new job sometime soon? Because many jobs will look at your credit score. And if your credit score has taken a hit through bankruptcy, then that may impact your ability to get a new job. Will you be moving at some point and you need to rent an apartment, or you want to try and buy a new home? So you have to consider what you plan to do within the next few years to make the determination of whether or not bankruptcy is the right choice for you. Because through bankruptcy, yes, you will get a fresh start, but it will cause your credit and your credit score to take a hit, which could affect some of the financial decisions that you need to make in the future. So once you determine whether or not bankruptcy is the right choice for you, then you want to look at which type of bankruptcy is right. Is it Chapter 7 or is it Chapter 13 bankruptcy? The difference between the two is Chapter 13 is where you kind of restructure, but you're planning to still pay back the creditors. And so what Chapter 13 does for you is it causes your creditors to not be able to contact you or not be able to pressure you for payment, but it kind of backs your creditors off. You put together a repayment plan through the court, and then you're paying off those creditors over time. Chapter 7 is different. Chapter 7 is a liquidation. And with Chapter 7 bankruptcy, you're not planning to pay back your creditors, but you do have to liquidate your assets. And then your assets, that after that liquidation, then that goes to pay those creditors, but then you're kind of done and you can have a fresh start from there. That brings me to this third point where it says, don't take money from qualified plans before bankruptcy. So in some cases, you might be pressured to buy creditors or individuals and they say, well, you got money in a 401k account, or you got money in a 403b account that's just sitting there that you could use to pay off these debts. If you're planning to file bankruptcy, then I would say don't take money out of those retirement type accounts because they're protected in bankruptcy. So there's the bankruptcy, those laws of qualified plans are governed by ERISA, and ERISA laws will protect those assets in those retirement accounts. So it does not benefit you to take those dollars out of those accounts to pay off your debts if you know you're going to file bankruptcy, because those assets will be protected from liquidation, and you'll be able to keep those assets if you have not taken them out to pay your creditors. And so I would say if you have money in those, go ahead, let's stick with the bankruptcy for a minute. If you have money in the 401k accounts or any kind of employer-sponsored retirement plan at work, or if you have money in the IRA account, don't take those dollars out to pay off your creditors if you know you're going to file bankruptcy. Okay, go ahead and advance it now. All right, so here's the financial planning process. This is where we start with the students in our program. This is like one of the first things they learn, the financial planning process. And it's first thing you do is you set financial goals, and then we gather relevant information. And then you analyze the data. And this is the exact process that I started with in the beginning, where you gather your relevant information. So your financial goal was debt repayment. And then we moved to the next step, which was gathering relevant information. And so that's the step where I said, let's sit down and organize your debts. Write down who you owe and how much you owe them. And then we're going to analyze that data, and we'll look at exactly where you are today and kind of put together a recommendation of a plan so that you can get to where you want to go, which is paying off your debt. This other step here, the implementation of your financial plan, this is probably the most important step though in the financial planning process. Like, once you've gathered all of this data and you have put together a plan, and now you're going to be repaying your debt, and it's also possible to repay your debt and save at the same time. But once you have that whole plan in place, then if you never really implement it, then you're not going to get to your goal. And so this is the most important step, is that you have to get to the place where you say enough is enough, and I am going to work this plan, and I'm going to put in place everything that that I've written down, and put in place the plan that I've written down, and I'm going to get myself out of this debt situation and get to a better overall financial well-being. And then it says the next step is monitoring the plan. And in monitoring the plan, that just means at some increment of time, you look back and say, okay, where am I now? How much more do I have to do? Are there any things that I need to tweak? Is my spending plan still a little out of whack? Like, can I kind of adjust that a little more, where I can have a few more dollars to pay off this debt? Or if you decide that you want to pay off your debt and save at the same time, am I doing that? Am I actually dedicating 10% of my income to pay off my debt and 10% of my income to savings? Doing it that way will cause your debt repayment to be a little slower, but you're still building some savings at the same time, which is good because you'll have that financial cushion in the future going forward. And so monitoring what you've been doing is important to do. And then if it's a circular motion, because sometimes you might need to reestablish your goals. But if you continue this process, then you'll ultimately get to where you want to be. Go ahead to the last slide for us, please. Thank you. And then the impact of debt is debt management. It touches each aspect of financial planning. And so when you're talking about investment planning, I'm just using investments because it came up a little earlier. But when you're talking about investment planning, you can use debt to invest in some ways. I won't talk about that right now, but if you're repaying debt, then that will limit the amount of positive cash flow in many cases that you have available to you to invest. Or debt management will touch your tax planning. If you have a mortgage, you're repaying the debt and interest on a mortgage, then that comes into play on your taxes. And so debt does touch each one of the outer circles that we talk about in financial planning. And so it's an important part because it's such an important part of the spending plan. All right, I think we are done. It's right at 3, and so, or 11, right?
12 our time. But yeah, perfect timing. Thank you so much, Kenneth. Are we gonna open it up for questions? Yeah, so if anyone has a question, feel free to put it in the chat. I know somebody said thank you so much, and I think they have to go, but you can put it in the chat, or you can turn on your video or your audio or both and let us know what your question is.
Do you feel that it's best to, like, if you have, like, cause I know you mentioned, like, should you pay off a debt or should you save? But if you're looking at the net worth, like, it's the same. But if you have a student loan debt, and you're like working to build like an emergency savings fund as well, would you prioritize like paying additional payments than the minimum on student loan debt, or build towards saving?
Yeah, I personally would prioritize getting an emergency fund first. So I would say if you are considering between student loan debt and saving up an emergency fund, then pay the minimum on your student loans and build up that emergency fund. And once you got your emergency fund, then go back to just kind of reevaluate the amount that you're paying on your student loans and then pay more if possible. But given our current situation, right now, federal student loans are in deferral, and maybe also some cancellation coming up. You might just want to see what happens in our current climate with student loans before you start allocating a lot of resources to paying off, especially if you have federal loans. Now, if you have private student loans, then that's a whole different ball game. But with the federal loans, with this new administration, you may just want to see what happens there.
Awesome, thank you so much.
Any other questions?
I'll say this also, with the new administration, the Consumer Financial Protection Bureau probably will have more teeth. It was kind of defanged in the last administration. And so going forward, if you are experiencing anything that might be harassment from debt collectors or companies that are trying to get you to repay debt and they're not following the proper guidelines to when they're contacting you, the Consumer Financial Protection Bureau is a good place to go. There's state agencies that you can go to, but on a federal level, the Consumer Financial Protection Bureau was actually established to protect consumers financially.
I have a question. So what would you say to folks that are trying to manage debt that isn't theirs? So if they were in an abusive situation and they're left with a mountain of debt, and it may have been years that have passed, so creditors, it might be hard to prove. Like, how would they manage going forward dealing with that debt?
Yeah. So depending on what type of debt it is, same thing, you want to contact the creditors and see what kind of assistance they might have. And if it's hard to prove, that may become a legal issue that they need to possibly hire an attorney. I mean, if it's enough debt that it warrants hiring, paying the expenses to hire an attorney, that may be a route that they might go. There's many. If it's debt from back taxes or something, then I would definitely say contact the advocacy groups in the IRS or the state tax agencies. If you contact the state attorney general's office, they'll have advocacy groups that could help with situations like that. But in a situation like that, you have to reach out to the resources that are available. And I would just start by contacting some of those legal organizations to help me sort through the things that I might be able to discharge because they aren't my own. And, in many cases, if you're able to discharge even 10, 20, 30% of those debts, that helps. And then if it gets to be too overwhelming, that bankruptcy option might be available. This is like being in class. Nobody has any questions?
I'll ask another question. So I get asked a lot about investing, especially when you have a small amount of income that's coming in. You're trying to manage your debt, you're trying to save, but you want to get started on some type of investing. Do you have any advice for folks that want to just get their feet wet with working with a small amount of income and investing?
So most people probably invest now through some kind of work plan, and many work plans, employers will offer a match. And so I'm gonna just start here at this level, because no matter how much debt you have, if your employer is offering you a match, you should be taking advantage of that, because that's free money coming to you. And so when you're talking about investing versus saving and paying off debt, take advantage of that. Take advantage of that match, and then any other dollars that you might have. There's apps now where you can just invest real small dollar amounts. If you have $5, a month, you can use some of the apps that are out now and just invest that way. And one of the things that you can do is just invest in a ETF, exchange traded fund, which is just an index fund. Put $5 in a month. That's a good way to get your feet wet. It's a good way to get in the habit of putting money aside, because when you talk about saving versus investing, after you save up money, you don't just want it to sit there, because inflation will kind of erode what you're able to do with it. So you do want to invest it, and so just getting started will get you in the habit of putting money into those investments. But go through work and try some of the apps that are out there that will allow you to invest some of those smaller dollar amounts.
Someone asked in the chat if there's an app that you like specifically, an app you favor.
All right, so transparency, I don't use the apps. So I don't have one that I would recommend, because I don't use them, but I do know that a lot of people do use them, like Robinhood and some of those apps like that. But my investments are primarily through work, and then I have some accounts at Vanguard that I use. But even then, once you set up those accounts, like I can send in, $5 if I wanted to invest more through those accounts.
And to the question about what are the best apps, a lot of times you can look at sites like, I believe it's NerdWallet, where they'll do a comparison of different apps, and they give unbiased information about what the pros and cons are, what the costs are of investing, and the steps to do that. So I would encourage you to look at sites like that, and reputable sites that can provide you with that information, and that way you can see what would be the best for your needs and your financial situation.
I'm glad you brought up cost, because that's an important thing in investing that you want to definitely pay attention to, is cost. When you talk about investing in like ETFs, then there's an expense ratio, but other apps and accounts like that might just have a flat fee. So sometimes it might be a percentage of what you're investing in. Other times you might have to pay just a fee to get started. Very nice, Em.
All right, are there any other questions that you all have before we sign off? Okay, and for those that are here now, or those that are watching this recording later, I can follow up with Dr. White if you have specific questions that perhaps you weren't comfortable with asking in front of everyone else, and I can get those questions out to him and get you a response. But other than that, thank you so much, Dr. White, for sharing the information. I think that I probably speak for everyone to say that we would love to have you back to speak on another topic. This has been very informative to all of us on the call, and we're grateful that you've taken the time out to provide us with this valuable information. So thank you so much.
Yeah, thank you so much. And people are saying thank you in the chat too.
Thank you. Thank you.
All right, thank you, everyone. I'm going to stop recording.